After Bangladesh, Myanmar becomes an extremely important geography for us, and we can't lose out and sit on the sidelines and allow Chinese to take over. That will be a disastrous situation. And if you then combine Myanmar and Bangladesh in your neighborhood, which is not essentially friendly to India, I think we lost it.
Our very, very special guest today is Mr. Atul Aneja. He's a strategic analyst based out of New Delhi, former strategic affairs editor of The Hindu, and editor of India Narrative. Thank you so much for joining us today, sir. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
You're very welcome, Ram. Pleasure is mine.
Today we're going to be discussing China's attempts to sort of forge an alternate to SAARC, which is sort of almost dead in the water ever since, I think, 2016, right? After the attack on Uri and things. So what exactly is this thing that they're planning, and why do you think China is planning this?
Well, the attempt is to somehow have an influence, and perhaps a predominant influence, in South Asia. And that's the bigger picture. Why it is happening is interesting because this has a context. And I think the context can be linked to what happened in Afghanistan when the Taliban took over Kabul. And that led to the rather unceremonious exit of the United States from that geography. And ever since, the Americans really haven't had a foothold in Southwest Asia. And they're wanting to get back into this very, very important geography because of its strategic location. It's if you look at Afghanistan, Pakistan, it leads to the Middle East, it leads to Central Asia, and of course broader South Asia. So it's a very, very important region where the Americans want to come back. And I think they got an opportunity when Op Sindoor took place, and the Pakistanis, who were going along very strongly with the Chinese, when you had, and they were part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor, that is China's outreach to the Arabian Sea through Gilgit-Baltistan and then most of Balochistan up to Gwadar. So it was a Kashgar to Gwadar corridor. So the Americans then, because the Pakistanis were in a very vulnerable position, they went to the Americans, and we know what happened in the ceasefire business when the Pakistani DGMO called us and sought for the ceasefire. But there was a back and forth going on between the Pakistanis and the Americans, and I thought the Americans got an opportunity here to get back into this region and get back through Pakistan, and that is what happened. You see Asim Munir later saying that Trump deserves a Nobel for this. Pure flattery, trying to cultivate the Americans. And Trump's own statement that he's willing to sort of mediate in Kashmir again. So, and that's that won't happen. That's not something which we will accept. That's for sure. But the attempt is for the Americans to get back into Pakistan. And that's where you have the China factor coming, because China is watching all this. And it doesn't want to have predominant American influence back in that geography, back in Pakistan and the AFPAC region. And that's where I think is the response coming from Pakistan in terms of this attempt to come back very strongly, not only come back, but to dominate completely Pakistan by offering Pakistan this trilateral mechanism as an alternative to SAARC. So the Pakistanis have an option now to play ball both with the Americans and the Chinese. It suits them. And secondly, and more importantly, which hurts India, which is the main problem. So the Pakistan will play ball with this. Then we have a very negative, from an Indian perspective, situation happening in Bangladesh. And you have the back of the Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh, which is essentially a Pakistani organization, and we know that there have been visits from the Pakistani ISI to Bangladesh under the Yunus regime. So the Bangladeshis are again Pakistan and Chinese coming into it. I think that is the triangulation, and they would want to attract more players. And frankly, Ram, this is a huge challenge for India, but we can go on that later. But I thought I'll just why the move.
I'm glad you put it into perspective. But I was just reading an article the other day where they quoted a Chinese commentator as saying that, I'll quote it out to you. It says, that the South Asian region needs external forces to enhance the well-being of the people of the region. And China's active participation is a responsibility. China has no selfishness in South Asia, and its active participation in regional affairs is due to the objective needs of the region. Now, apart from being very sort of, condescending, is there an element of truth in that?
No, there's no question of any truth in this. It's a contest which is going on, Ram. We are into a multipolar world, and there are various poles. And frankly, India, these are poles defined essentially by civilisational states, and India is one of them. And surely, historically and civilisationally, we are our bandwidth stretches across this region. And as for the Chinese, but I have spent time in China, but I thought it's the Confucian world, which is frankly their backyard, which would start from mainland China and stretch down perhaps up to Vietnam at most. The Koreas come into it. I've traveled in that region, you can see the Confucian imprint. But down from Vietnam, southwards into Southeast Asia, this is essentially India's historical footprint. So the question is that the poles haven't settled. We know that the multipolar world is in transition, but it's not settled. That there is no conversation between India and China, for example, as to settle on where your geocultural bandwidth starts and stops. And that's far away. So we are now in a phase of jostling, where the Chinese trying to intrude in the South Asian pole, which is essentially the Indian pole. And I think this a reflection of that. The statement which you read out is essentially the Chinese trying to push the envelope into South Asia, which is essentially Indian pole. And so, Ram, we are bound to feel, while the multipolarity is coming in, there is going to be a hell of a lot of contestation going on between now till the multipolar world settles. And India and China will be at the front of it. There'll be areas where we will even cooperate. But there'll be areas where we will definitely be at loggerheads at each other. So it's a complex game which has started. Certainly, what the Chinese are saying about South Asia and getting this alternative to SAARC is something which is completely unacceptable to India. And this will be contested by India. We wouldn't want either the Sri Lankans or the Maldivians or Nepalese to be part of any such arrangement. This doesn't just suit India's core national interest. I just want to make one point that this particular contestation is sharpened, in my view, after Ops Sindoor, because we demonstrated our power. And till now, when it was counter-terror, it was essentially words. Even, we had things like 26/11 taking place, Mumbai attacks. There was no real, it starts with Balakot really, but this was one clear expression of India's intent, which the world has noticed, and it will contest this. So I think now we are in a new sort of a realm altogether of regional and international geopolitics, where India has put its foot forward. I don't think there is any way we can go back. And we have to join this contestation, which will come. Only thing, and I met the Chinese recently, and there is one area of consensus that neither they nor us want a war. But short of war, I think there's going to be a hell of a lot of contestation, and this will happen in the region here. And perhaps we will go in the Indo-Pacific and go to countries like Vietnam, which are on Chinese borders. That might happen as well.
Now, there's a lot of countries which have been sort of amongst our neighbors, which have been sort of playing one off against the other in order to get the best deal. Now, given that China has more sort of financial clout, I don't know about the other kind of clouts that it uses, because it also uses a lot of, political clout too. What are India's options?
Frankly, we are on the defensive, Ram. As far as soft power is concerned, as far as, areas like health and DPI, education, we are way ahead of the Chinese. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to hard power, we are far below, we are not in the same league as the Chinese are. We can't set up factories the way Chinese do in Africa, or build railways, let's say, from Mombasa down to the Uganda border. So frankly, we are on the defensive, but we have to fight back. And how do we do that? There is no other option but to go on the geoeconomic track and build our economic muscle. Without that, we will not have the financial clout to contest. And we have no other option. So frankly, we have had Op Sindoor, but there is no reason for us to gloat as to it is part of a process which has started, and we are not yet ready for a $10 trillion economy, which we will require to fulfill our core national interests and geopolitical necessities. So there is no. I agree with you that we are on the defensive as far as hard power is concerned, but we are building up. We have started the whole game of Viksit Bharat 2047. If we grow at 9-10%, which we must, indigenization process in the military, I thought the air defense, the way it held up during Op Sindoor is also not because of big players, but also small startups onwards. If you see in places like Hyderabad and Bangalore, which are coming into their own to give us a military heft as well. So militarily we have to grow, economically we have to grow, but there's no other option. Team India has just to get together. We otherwise we are going to be cornered. We have played a game. I mean, we have moved forward. Starts actually with the G20, which we hosted, that we are on the global stage. But to be on the global stage, we have to build our economic and financial muscle. Without that, it's going to be very, very difficult just to glide on soft power to contest China, which we will have to do in various geographies of the world till the time a new equation, a new equilibrium settles with China. I would like to also say that while we contest, we have learned this from post-Galwan period, is that to continue to maintain a dialogue with the Chinese. Don't let that break off while we do the negotiation. And that is a lesson which is learned. So there will be a time, not now, it's going to be way down the line. It's hard to predict whether it's going to be a decade or more. But this will be a phase of contestation with the Chinese and areas of collaboration, perhaps on the geoeconomic plane, investment, etc., EVs, maybe that kind of stuff. But we have no option but to build that kind of capacity, both financial, economic, and military, to come to that equilibrium which I'm talking about. And we are on the back foot there, to be honest, when it comes to hard power.
Before we sort of quickly look at all our neighbors to see where we are with them, what went wrong with BIMSTEC? I mean, we tried that as an alternative to SAARC, but that too seems to be sort of not much seems to be happening there. What were the main reasons for BIMSTEC sort of not fulfilling its potential?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I agree with you. BIMSTEC is below par where it should be as an alternative to SAARC. I think somewhere we lost focus on that. We need to push that organization big time, because frankly, Bay of Bengal community is a futuristic community. It spans South Asia, Southeast Asia. It's got big players inside. And very, very strategically located geographies. You have Thailand, bordering Myanmar. Of course, we have Sri Lanka. So Bangladesh is part of it. So these are very, very important countries in the entire region. And I think it's high time and especially now the warning has come from this trilateral or an alternative formed by China, that we have no time to lose but to push BIMSTEC. And I think it's time to do some heavy lifting here, to put some financial muscle into it. And frankly, a very active diplomacy and is required here to sort of give the importance it deserves in the light of this shifting geopolitical equations. BIMSTEC, I think, becomes very important. It's not been given its due importance. And it's time that we really focus on it. And perhaps look at other alternatives as well, which go beyond. Maybe, we had organizations like IPSA, which had been formed, which was India, Brazil, South Africa. It's very, very important. There's no China there. We can't just afford to just, lose sight or focus on these organizations. We need to revive that and revamp that. The point is that the global South, Ram, is going to be the area of contestation between us and the Chinese in the multipolar world. We need from BIMSTEC in various geographies to Africa to others to have somewhere collective arrangements in partnership with global South countries to expand our influence in these areas, and to sort of guard certain areas for which should be of prime Indian interest, and I don't like to use the word dominate, but there should be certain areas where we can count on when the chips are down. And this is not just South Asia, not just Southeast Asia, but I think we are going beyond that now in other areas of global South. And I think Africa and Latin America are both important. The Prime Minister's visit, frankly, just as a tangent, is a very important. Trinidad, Tobago, tomorrow is going to be Argentina, and then it's going to be Brazil. So it's there. We need to build this institutionalized mechanisms all over. For the coming, at least within the next decade, because the situation which we are facing is very dire. If we don't do, if we are not proactive, and we sort of on the back foot, then our rivals and enemies are going to do their best to get at us. So either we play on the front foot, or do nothing. But we don't have any other option but to play on the front foot. There's no other way.
But you mentioned the word not to be seen as dominant. But how much of a factor is what is called, I think, the Big Brother syndrome? How much of that how much role does that play in the neighborhood?
Ram, to be very honest, we are a big brother. We can't help it. We are bigger. We have a bigger economy. We have a larger population. But we can be a benign big brother. There's no point in shying away from being a big brother. But you can be a good big brother. You can be somewhere which takes everybody along with you, and not to be a bully. And that's possible. But I don't see any reason to shy away from the word that we are a big brother in our region, and we are. Which let's accept that, but let's not be a bully in the region. And we have ideas of the collective rise of the region, and let's work on that. But I'm not shying away from the word, frankly, because my definition of a big brother is not what is conventionally seen as a big bully. The United States is a big brother all over. I mean, and there are people who accept it. The question, Ram, is really of how much power you have. You can use power negatively, you can use power positively, but you need power. And I think India has to acquire both economic and military and soft power, cultural power, to play a big brother's role, which will be acceptable to the smaller brothers, because nobody let's face harsh realities. Nobody contests countries which have power and which have capacities. Just as an aside, when I was in China, I remember the visit of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and a man fighting for Palestinians, that the Islamist cause, etc. But not a word about Chinese atrocities on Uyghur Muslims in that area, in Xinjiang.
Right.
Why? I asked to myself, because China is powerful, and and Turkey, despite all its Islamism, will not say a word about it. So I think essentially the lesson which I drew out of it is that without power, you are going to have small players trying to sort of play one against the other, etc. But we have to go beyond this threshold. And to me, $5 trillion economy is simply not enough. You have to get $10 trillion and beyond, and you will see a lot of these voices quietening down. But then the responsibility on us is not to be a bully if you are powerful. I mean, that's our tradition. We need the collective right of the region, and we should play that role of a benign big brother. But power is essential.
But sometimes that's a bit of a thin line, in the sense that when people start pushing to see how far they can get away with, somewhere we also have to draw a line. I mean, if you look at Bangladesh, if you look at other countries,
absolutely.
How do you define? Have we defined our red lines yet?
I thought we had, but in the case of Bangladesh, we did not, to be very honest. Because, here is a country for which we have sacrificed. I mean, there's no shying away that, thousands of Indian soldiers died for the sake of the birth of Bangladesh. And we sort of sorted out one flank, which was East Pakistan, into a country which was with us, essentially. I mean, there were variations which took place within. So this is an achievement, and we owe it to ourselves and to the people who perished for this cause, that this remains the way it is. It used to be. And I thought that was a red line, but to somewhere not foresee a regime change taking place in Bangladesh, I think we lost the plot there. And frankly, thereafter, Now we have a situation which is extremely negative, and both as we started our conversation, both our rivals and enemies, the Chinese and the Pakistanis, are both at it in Bangladesh, and which is like a East Pakistan situation with the
And of course,
Northeast.
even the Americans.
And even the Americans have had it, with the stopping of US aid and coming of Trump, it sort of moved a little bit. But essentially, the regime change took place under Joe Biden and the US deep state, the Soros Foundation and others. So they were all part of it. Essentially, it was not done by the Chinese, but by the Americans of the earlier dispensation. So, that is a red line. Now we need to somehow come back in Bangladesh. Otherwise, from there, if we don't, our northeast gets exposed, and another friendly country, Myanmar, which is bordering Bangladesh, gets impacted. Look at Bangladesh's geography. We also had access of the North Sea and of the northeast to the sea. For example, ports like Matarbari was coming up, Chittagong we were looking at, and Sitwe, of course, in Myanmar. These were essential outlets for our Act East policy focused on the rise of the Northeast India. So all that goes into jeopardy because we have, I would not hesitate to say, we have a hostile regime in Bangladesh right now. And somewhere, I thought we need to reinforce those red lines. If we need to review that, we need to review our red lines across our region. But Bangladesh, what situations may arise again in Maldives or in Sri Lanka or in Nepal. If we haven't defined our red lines and if we haven't conveyed our red lines to our partners in this region, then we are asking for trouble. So I think I agree with you that Big Brother, yes, there are certain things, certain times when you also put, what is the threshold you will accept. They're going against you in some way.
Exactly.
Okay, this is the envelope you can stretch up to. This is something which needs to be understood by our neighbors as well.
You mentioned Myanmar. Now, a lot of our sort of so-called Act East policy seems to have been stuck on the fact because of Myanmar's internal issues, which sort of prevents us from moving forward earlier through Bangladesh into Myanmar and then further southeast. But now with Bangladesh also becoming an issue, what exactly is going on vis-a-vis Bangladesh and Myanmar at some levels in
the relationship?
I mean, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned that there is a issue with Myanmar which we might be able to resolve somewhere.
Ram, essentially what's happened is that because of our decline in influence, at least for the moment, in Bangladesh, I think Myanmar becomes a very, very important geography as far as our Act East policy and outreach to Southeast Asia is concerned. And so therefore, I think if you look at Myanmar, they are still a bit of that old non-aligned mold. They were part of the Panchsheel, by the way, the third signatory. Yes. They were definitely one of our partners in the non-aligned movement in the 50s and 60s. So there is that sense of independence which the Myanmaris feel. They don't want to, despite all the problems, they don't want to put their eggs in one basket. Because of their isolation right now, because of sanctions which have been imposed against them, at least before Trump, they had forced to rely on the Chinese, especially in northern Myanmar. And they also reached out to the Russians when it came to weaponry. The Ming and Lai, the state administrative council chief, or the military generals, senior, visited Moscow. He's visited Belarus. And so that outreach to Russia and its ecosystem has also been there. But the third country which they want to engage very deeply and most importantly and historically is India. And that is where, especially when it comes to the bordering areas with India's northeast. So you have, from an Indian perspective, I see no hesitation in going fully ahead and sort of shoring up and having a very close relationship with the Myanmar and especially the military, because they will go for elections. They want to do that by the end of this year and perhaps at latest by January 2026. But whatever dispensation comes in, the military is bound to play a very major role. So I think we need to be constructive here and help Myanmaris. They would probably want some help from us to conduct the elections, our election commission people coming and sharing our experience with them. I see no reason why we should not hesitate. While if we have our contacts with some of the important insurgent groups, and if we can engage them and play a constructive role, I think we should have a dialogue with everybody in Myanmar. But if you look at the entire picture, I see that, don't alienate the military, because come what may, they will play an important role. And so instead of being a fence sitter there and waiting and watching, I think it's time India played a very, very active role and an open role in Myanmar, explaining to the military that we can't put all our eggs in your basket because we have other responsibilities as well. Frankly, the military is also looking for our relationship with the United States to open a track with them. And I've had conversations with them that if India can be helpful in reopening the stalled dialogue between the military and the United States. ASEAN is a very important element in it, and if we can help them through the ASEAN route, we should. But the point I'm making, after Bangladesh, Myanmar becomes an extremely important geography for us, and we can't lose out and sit on the sidelines and allow Chinese to take over. That will be a disastrous situation. And if you then combine Myanmar and Bangladesh in your neighborhood, which is not essentially friendly to India, I think we lost the point. So coming to your question, I think Myanmar very, very important, and it's a challenge for us, and we can't be fence-sitters.
We've almost run out of time. Let me end with a quick question, which is slightly a broader perspective. There was a time when it was said that India, despite being a power, did not understand how to use power, and I think Pahalgam sort of was a step to show that now we do know. But would it be correct to say that, from what I'm hearing from you, that it's not just important to speak softly and carry a big stick, but that it is important now that people know we are able and willing to use that stick?
Absolutely. It's a new paradigm which has opened, Ram, with Ops Sindhu. We have come out in the open, and our capacity to use force in our area, we have shown it to the world, and the world has taken notice of it. And therefore, using power judiciously to promote India's legitimate and core interests is something which the world is going to accept. And I think we should, get these blinkers off wherever we need to exercise power. Again, calibrated power. I think we must, and that is a mindset we should be, without in any way treading on other people. It's not necessary to do that. Judicious our power is legitimate, and to secure our interests, to have security around us, to have our economic energy security, we have to. There is no other way. You're seeing events in Iran happening. Our energy is coming from the Gulf. Should we be just sitting around? We don't have that option. We have to be a player. How do we do it? In what form? Directly, indirectly, is something which we have to think about. But we have to play the bigger game now. We have come on the global stage. So exercise of power, judicious use of power has to be part of our calculation and ideation at all levels, from the policy level to think tank levels to the media everywhere. And again, Ram, finally, it's going to be Team India now. You cannot have, out from citizen point of view, outsource everything to the government. We are all in it, and whatever role we have, there is no escaping this. And I think it's a good stage to be.
Do you see that happening, or do you still see sort of hiccups along the way?
Still hiccups. Some things have happened. Some things have moved, for sure. And I can see within our establishment, things have moved. But has it been downstreamed? I don't think, because it's a paradigm shift completely. It's not the old way of doing things. And I don't think it's downstreamed, even with people who wish to join the new processes. I thought what was good after Ops Sindoor was the outreach to all the opposition parties, to be honest, to send them all together as India's voice across the globe. I think that spirit of carrying everyone along, there will be some which will not be carrying or will be opposed to you, what come, what may. And we know which sections they are. But there are many others in the gray zone who would want to be engaged with and will be part of extending the narrative which we wish to project. I think we have to take everyone along and do it. Your question, whether it has percolated down the line, only partially. Much more heavy lifting needs to be done on that end as well.
Let's hope that happens quickly, because, as you said, we don't have much time.
We don't have time.
I mean, I'm sorry, but with that, we have to sort of call this interview to an end. Thank you so very much. I think in many ways you opened my eyes to what the kind of situation we are in. So thank you.
Pleasure was entirely mine.
Thank you. That was Atul Aneja, one of India's foremost strategic thinkers, explaining what China's attempts at building an alternative to SAARC means to us and why it is important for India to assert itself not just regionally, but perhaps at some levels globally. I do hope you enjoyed this particular edition of The Gist, and I look forward to having you with again. Till then, this is Ramananda Sengupta signing out.